Honestly, I think any of us would be more than happy to wear this. It's got kind of that what we call a baller watch vibe, which is just basically a big conservative-looking sporty watch in a precious metal. It's easy to get away with. It's just a nice, handsome, bulky gold timepiece with a pretty reliable movement. So it'd be hard to say no to it. Yeah, to pay for it, okay. There's a lot, less expensive tool watches out there. But this is sort of the same situation as the guy that wears like the solid gold Submariner. Like you definitely don't need to wear it in gold at all, but it's kind of like a screw you world to wear it. So this is a screw you world watch.
Greetings and welcome to this week's aBlogtoWatch Weekly, where you will see if you're tuned in to aBlogtoWatch Weekly Live. If you can't wait till Thursday for the full show to be nicely edited into a little package and you'd rather see the chaos and anarchy of the actual recording, then you can go to YouTube and look at aBlogtoWatch Weekly Live. You'll also get a bit of a preamble and a bit of a post-match, so we encourage you to do that if you can't wait to Thursday. And if you are tuned into the video, you will already have noticed that 4 have become 5 and 1 Richard has become 2. We have divided and conquered. We welcome Richard Benc from Studio Underd0g to the show. Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah. Good morning, Richard. How are you?
I'm very well. I think we just make the 2 of us and that'll be fine. We'll just let the others observe the excellence of Richard speaking to each other. But let's not do that because that would actually be a bit dull. Ripley, good morning. How are you? It's all right. I don't think people appreciate the passion you have for this podcast, recording it.
Sorry, guys. In true technical fashion, you've gone from my ears, so we're having some technical difficulties. My morning alarm has just gone off on my phone, and that has connected my headphones to my phone. So bear with me just 1 second.
Amateur error of the podcasting scene. Amateur error. But yes, Ripley, you're very much committed to this form of media, so that's good to see. Ariel, equally committed.
Right, we're back. Apologies.
Richard is back. Ariel, you're still whereabouts you ever was.
We're not back.
No. Okay. Well, for those of you listening live, you're seeing the chaos going on. Ariel, how are you this morning?
My audio is working great, thank you very much. And I'm here waiting for Richard the Third.
Yay!
So maybe find another one, and then you could have the true Richard triad.
We'd be a Shakespearean tragedy all to ourselves and not just Richard Benc's microphone.
I can hear everyone except Rick now. I don't know how that works.
That's because I'm not speaking. I'm now speaking. Can you hear us? This is going to be a joy to edit.
1 sec.
Oh, no, he's gone. Richard has left the room. Oh, that's fine. We'll speak about Studio. We'll see all the nasty things now about Studio Underd0g.
Do we have sound effects? I think there should be a good sound effect of that,
Our current editor does add the occasional sound effect. It has to be said for those that tune in.
That's the poll I wanted. Does the audience want more sound effects? And if so, should there be watch-themed sound effects?
More sound effects. Well, that will be our poll this week. More sound effects.
I want to have like the sound of a mainspring just all unwinding in one second or something like that. That should be like a deflated sound.
Do you think someone makes a good point? It can be the sound of the mainspring being reseated in the barrel. That really satisfying click of just like,
or at the very tail end of a mechanical alarm. That's a nice sad sound.
Well, if you've got a sound effect you would like us to match up with something, then do give us a shout. Right, Richard is ready to be let back in the room, so let's do this and let's some more chaos ensue. Maybe 2 Richards was a bit of an over. Maybe that's the problem. It's like when you bring 2 magnets. When you bring 2 magnets together, it's the 2 positives. We're just rejecting each other.
Apologies, gents. Yeah, that was my, hopefully that's the only technical issue we have of the day. That was my alarm going off on my phone, which decided to disconnect everything Bluetooth related.
That's a push your alarm. Why would it do that? I mean,
he got the software update. That's why.
Yeah, strangely, Apple did not mention any of this in the presentation about the earbuds that Ariel and I attended.
That's part of treating sleep apnea. Don't you know that?
Disconnect you from our podcast. Well, if you are tuned into the live show and you happen to know Richard's mobile phone number, I'll not broadcast it here. Maybe try ringing him and see if it all happens again.
Or please don't. That's almost certainly going to happen. Do you know what? I'm even going to put my phone on dare I even touch it. I'm going to put it on airplane mode now, which is probably what I should have done from the get-go.
Well, that'll disconnect your headphones as well, will it not? No, that takes
We're good. We're good. It's all off. It's all off.
We're here. Excellent. David, how are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. And what's your favourite watchmaker sound effect?
This mainspring sound, it made me think of like maybe we could find like some really annoying unwinding sound and just stretch it for like 90 minutes. So it would be constantly in the background. Like, yeah.
Just a
or the sound of somebody slowly winding a movement.
A Valjoux 7750 rotor rotating in the non-winding direction.
Oh, that's probably the worst sound, yes.
Oh yeah. I've got a Breguet we could probably do that with. I could just wind up this 8-day Panerai. It probably takes about a month to fully wind up. Just this.
You lose their fingers doing that, Rick.
You do. It does. It's like learning to play guitar. There's a distinct like little callus just here in the thumb from winding it up. There we go.
You can tell it's an enthusiast podcast because I think we all kind of heard, each of those individual sounds pretty clearly in our heads.
That's true.
Yeah. So. You've got a new watch coming, Richard, launching today. What's the sound of the new 3 Series Monopusher salmon? Is it the sound of the Scottish wilderness because of the salmon, or of slightly off fish?
Oh yeah, what noise does a salmon make? That's a good question. I'm not all that sure. Hopefully it's not a noise of of flopping about. Hopefully we'll go with the nice crunches of the of the pusher. How's that? That sounds a little bit nicer.
Good stuff. Now, we covered your Moser collab that David and Ariel had seen. Some of us were more fans than others, it has to be said. But you're quite happy to accept that it's better to have an opinion on a watch than for a watch to produce no opinion whatsoever. But I would like to explore how you got there and where you think the trajectory of Studio Underd0g is, because I think you're a man with a plan. I think that's very clear. So how did the Moser thing come together? Was it just eyes meeting across a very expensive restaurant in Geneva one afternoon over some passion fruit coulis?
I wish I was dining in expensive restaurants in Geneva more if that was going to be if that was a potential outcome. No, I was put in touch with Edward directly middle of last year. I was speaking to Andrew Morgan, and he put us in touch. He kind of said, "Who would you love to meet, or who would you love to work with?" And I said, Edward, Moser. They share an approach to the industry in terms of they're playful. I'd love to get an intro. So that was it. It was a literal 30-minute coffee meeting. I think Edward had a busy day in London, so I managed to, I think, get half an hour at about 8 a.m. in the morning in London. I know that I was living in a different city, and that was a little bit of a trek for me in the morning. But, I was there on time, ready for my first coffee of the day, and it certainly was an important one, that's for sure.
Cool. And so how easy was it to germinate the idea of this kind of collab? Because it's a bit of an unusual collaboration in that it's 2 watches from either end of the market, but being sold together. It's not like an Omega and a Moon swatch whereby you can choose to buy the really expensive one or you can choose to buy the pastiche in plastic. It's a bit different from that. Where did that kind of concept come from?
That's true. I guess, that's been done to an extent. The 2 brands that, as you said, are on very, very different sides of the market when it simply comes down to price point, right? But our community and a lot of enthusiasts are able to appreciate both brands. And I think that comes down to, I guess, a level of enthusiasm for the industry. When I met Edward, the first thing that we did was swap watches. I was looking at his Streamliner, admiring the finishing and the details and the bracelet and whatnot. And he was looking at the Studio Underd0g Watermelon and sort of chuckling at the various design details that he was kind of discovering. This was the first time that he got hands-on. So at that point, it was a case of it didn't really matter about the price point of these 2 watches when we'd handed them over. We were both just admiring these watches for different reasons. So that was, I guess, probably, without me realizing at the time, that was probably what got the ball rolling. I was very conscious that, Moser and Edward specifically, a lot of people that he meets probably pitch him great and grand ideas of collaborations. I'm sure he probably, doesn't like the vast majority of them. So I was very conscious to go, you know what, if at the end of this half-hour meeting he remembers my name, if we are in Geneva at a lovely restaurant and he sees me, there's a chance that he might go, hey, that guy's Rich, I remember him. That was the objective. There was no element of me that was going to pitch a collaboration just because I thought, let's give it some time. I'm still a rookie in this industry. But towards the end of that coffee meet, he actually pitched to me. He said he had an idea and had an idea for a while in terms of working with a brand at a very different price point, but didn't exactly know what that looked like. He said him and the team had discussed this sort of back in 2016, so well before Studio Underdog existed. So that was it. He essentially planted the seed in my mind that there was some opportunity here. And I took his initial concept and I kind of worked with it and sculpted it and, Studio Underdogified it.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. So it's a collaboration. Yeah, I'm interested, Ariel, in your thoughts also around the whole idea of, are we at peak collaboration? Because collaboration seems to be the it thing. Ariel.
Well, there's sort of a natural collaboration that I wonder may have been missed, but perhaps, Richard, you discussed it with Edward. And that is essentially this. As you mentioned, he seemed to be familiar with Studio Underdog and was aware of what you guys were doing. You're obviously a fan of what they're doing. And both of you have had success in your respective areas. Why not he design the Studio Underdog watch for him and you design the H. Moser watch for you? Why was that not the approach?
Well, I'd say it kind of was to an extent. When it came to the actual, we've almost got this. There's almost kind of a splinter project, which is close on exactly that. I assume when you're saying, we obviously pulled through some of the Moser DNA into the our Studio Underdog passion fruit watch in terms of stripping back the branding and it kind of looking like an incredibly clean dial, which Moser is very well known for. I guess you're saying sort of that at a price point, or that's more accessible, right? Rather than being sold as a set.
No, like a true cross collaboration where you're making they in a sense they wouldn't look the same necessarily, right? Because if he's doing what he wants from you and you're doing what you want from him, inherently they're going to look different. Otherwise, it's what a coincidence. So your exercise was obviously, what if we tried to make a similar looking version of both, which I understand. But I'm just wondering, philosophically, would it have been more satisfying if he was executing his vision of what he wanted to see at your price point and you were executing your vision of what you want to see at his price point?
Who knows? Maybe there's a collaboration 2.0 on the horizon.
Sure, there has to be. But just like there's anniversaries all the time, the collaborations must never stop now.
But to go to the question I posed before, are we, like, collaborations just seem to be everybody's way of marketing? Rather than marketing what you're actually making, you're marketing the collaboration and then what you've made.
The problem, Richard, is I think everything actually is a collaboration outside of those rare instances where there's like Sylvain Berneron who's like doing it all himself. Almost everything essentially is a collaboration. They're just making a thing out of it. So I don't think they're going away. They're just, I think the publicizing of it has been ramped up.
David, Ripley, thoughts, emotions, feelings?
I'm trying to like run through Ariel's like the end of that. What would it would look like? You would get a pretty sexy fume dial, and I think we could get like a watermelon streamliner would be pretty sick, or maybe a pizza streamliner. But Ariel, is that like where you were going with that one? Like just do one totally and vibe with the other?
It's open-ended. That's the thing, which is interesting. You have these people who did really good at one price point, but they're all collectors. That's the thing, which needs to be talked about more. It's not like Edward and his brother are just like, oh, we only like Moser stuff, or maybe Otlans, because we make that as well. Like, they like other things. That Swiss Icons watch is proof of it. So to see them lending their creative mind to another brand they like, I think is fulfilling and satisfying, as long as they don't overdo it.
Cool. Well, Richard, you have this Monopusher and a drop happening today. Tell us what your expectations are for this. Do you think this is on the coattails of the the Moser work, or was this already?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for the Moser project, I think there was an understandable pushback from the community who wanted access to that project. So the reality was that the passion fruit launch was a bit of a soft launch of our 03 series, in the fact that it was our introduction of a Swiss monopusher movement in a relatively recognizable aesthetic that we've kind of become known for in terms of our big eye chronograph. So we've taken a similar approach to design in terms of poking fun at the industry to an extent. Every watch brand has to have a salmon dial watch in their assortment, whereas we took influence from a different part of the salmon, focusing on the skin. And it's allowed us to push the suppliers that we're able to work with, working with Sellita on an SW510 manual movement. And so far the response has been, really well received, for the most part, I'll say. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it's received later today. Hopefully the technical issues I had at the start of this call will be the only technical issues I have today.
Good stuff. So obviously the price is beginning to creep up. You're using a different movement. It's a more expensive finish, presumably, just to say. And everyone needs to go on a holiday, and everyone deserves a new car. So, the price is slowly creeping up. Do you feel that you are in this phase whereby you want to be doing, better is the wrong description, but watches that fundamentally cost more? Like, are you on the rise in terms of your price point? 5 years from now, are we going to see you producing, Bel Canto equivalents or something like that, entering that sphere? What is your kind of, I always hate asking what's a 5-year plan, because I never think most plans survive meeting actual reality very often. But in your head, what's the dream as to where Studio Underdog sits in 5 years' time in the watch world?
Well, it's as you said, I often don't think that far ahead. 3.5 years ago, Studio Underdog didn't exist, so it's really difficult to try and figure out where the brands will be in 5 years' time. I think a lot of the case, it's still designing watches and designing product that I like and I resonate with. Right, that salmon has been in the works since late 2021. The year that I started Studio Underdog, this was something that had been in development. So I also don't think it's a massive shift. Obviously, in terms of price point, it's different from what we're currently offering, but it's a new series. It's a new collection. It's not here to replace the price point of the watermelon or take over or be necessarily the standalone future of the brands. We're just broadening our portfolio. We're adding another collection to the range. Some of our customers, or more to the point, some people that are fans of the brands that aren't customers, have been quite excited to see a watch that is in our chronograph aesthetic. Whilst they may never be drawn to the seagull, now they have this as an option. So I wouldn't necessarily say this is, the total future of the brand. We're still having the 01 and 02 series as an important part of our foundations. When I think we first spoke, Rick, I was on the podcast in 2022, I think. So the brand was still very much in its infancy. And yourself and Ariel was saying, I think after the call, is this brand going to exist in a handful of years? And I think it's taking those steps to make sure that we can be around in decades to come. That's really, when we talk about long term, it's not necessarily long term in terms of product, but I do think long terms in terms of how can I make sure that Studio Underdog is still here and here to stay.
Mm-hmm. So 2 questions finally, then we'll move on to some other watch chat. One is, you must be close to being, like, if not the biggest manufacturer in the UK, which is probably Christopher Ward in terms of UK-owned companies. You've got to be close to being number 2, because I can't think of very many other UK-based watch firms that are moving as much product.
I guess it depends. I guess it depends what approach you take in terms of a UK brand. I mean, what I would say is we're probably if not one of the largest assembler of watches in the UK, and that's not really saying that we're a huge big company. That's to say that it's something that doesn't really exist. and we've had to grow that ourselves, which has been quite challenging. If you go to Switzerland or China, you've got ample suppliers that you can reach out to help assemble and ship any sort of quantity that you wish. Whereas in the UK, that's not really existed, and something that we've had to build out. When I first started, it was a case of I was working with one watchmaker, Raphael, who was, helping me QC and whatnot and assemble some of my watches. He's got to the point now where he manages a team of, I believe, 15, 9 of which are on the assembly workshop, making as many Studio Underdog watches as we can. We had a record month last month, which was 1,200 watches, which was great. So, yeah, we're I wouldn't say we're competing with some of the bigger British brands. Of course, Christopher Ward and Bremont, many multiples the size of what we're doing. But I like to keep it lean and keep it fun. And, as much as I'm running a serious business, I don't take myself or things too seriously. And I think that's what's helped, ground the business to an extent.
Cool. And you are fundamentally a designer. Do you think you'll stick with watches, or is Studio Underdog going to be on other things shortly?
Yeah, well, look, the watch industry is a slippery slope from a collective, or even from, myself. As soon as I started getting into the space, designing, I've never particularly wanted to leave it. When I started the brand, part of the brand identity in terms of Studio Underdog as a brand name was in reference just to that, into the fact that if I did suddenly want to release a chair, every designer's got to have a good chair that they've designed at some point in their life. I'd be able to do that under the Studio Underdog brands, whereas that's kind of matured. And at the moment, I have no real interest in designing a chair right now.
Ariel would be your first customer, big chair collector. Ariel.
I love talking about chair design.
One day there will be a hit miss maybe on chairs. Right, let's move on. This is a little bit linked to what we're discussing. Article by Mike. Wait a minute, everything matters because nothing matters. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read this, but it basically poses a question in its title. To what extent does any of this matter? Where are you on the curve of life of getting into watches, thinking it's the most important thing in the world, then realizing nothing matters, then realizing it's the only thing that matters because it's the only constant in your life? Where is the sensible place that a collector or a watch fan should reside? I suppose, Richard,
Easy.
in the kind of world of seriousness. Go on, Ariel.
You have to ask yourself if the hobby still makes you happy. If it makes you happy, then of course it matters. If it doesn't, then take a pause, move on to something else, maybe approach it later and figure out a different approach for it. That's really what it's about, is does the hobby and the pursuit of watches, the ownership, the talking about watches that make you happy? And there have been plenty of instances for people that, for whatever reason, it hasn't, and they've paused and maybe come back years later.
David, you were sad last week. Are you happy this week?
I'm mostly always happy. Yes, thank you for asking. I quite like how all the watch discussions here on this podcast and also in our columns are becoming ever more philosophical and less about watches themselves. Soon we are asking ourselves about the meaning of life.
Exactly,
which is quite all right. I like this approach very much.
We do. This is a hobby that we're all into. We spend a serious amount of time. Ariel, David, Ripley, it's your full-time jobs. How do you, and the other Richard, how do you still get the pleasure from this when it's what puts money, bread on the actual table? Because you can't wake up one morning and decide you're not doing this anymore, but you all got into it presumably because you loved watches. So how do you sort it out in your own hearts and minds? Ripley, David?
Is it ever just the watch? I think the watches are often a vehicle to explore a bunch of related interests, whether it's the engineering, the mechanical science, the history, the design. There's a lot more than just like, hey, we made this thing, here's what it does and here's how it looks. So I feel like there's always something to talk about. What's exciting about one watch is certainly not true for every timepiece, and vice versa. But I don't know, it's never just the watches. So I feel like with each release, there's something there's something else to sort of talk about related to it. You know, it could be aesthetic, it could be the history of it, or it could literally be what they're doing from a technical standpoint. But I've yet to be completely bored with watches as a whole. Some watches certainly bore me, but as a whole, watches are still very much an interest.
So what Ripley's saying is he gets to keep learning, and as long as we get to keep learning, it has an interest to it.
So, but does learning always make you happy? Because you're
weirdos like us, yeah.
Well, I mean, it depends what you learn, Rick. I've learned a lot of things throughout the years that have not made me happy at all. It's been quite the opposite. But no, I think when you're learning about something that you enjoy, and you know, you're learning this is how this brand did it, this is why they wanted to do it. You know, I think that's all very interesting. Presumably, as long as you find the subject material itself interesting.
I was just going to say, you know, I'm still a rookie in this, so I've not got sick to death of the industry just yet. You know, I've only really got a few years under my belt. But Ariel, you've been in the industry a long time. Have you ever stepped back? Have you ever taken a kind of a break, or you're still learning every day?
It's kind of like my relation with Los Angeles. It's the best place I found to live so far, right? So if I find a better place to live, I could reevaluate it. I'm not a romantic that way, but practically
speaking,
speaking,
if the chair thing takes off,
there hasn't been a better place. So watches has been a nice combination of lifestyle and appreciation of beauty and art and sort of a social element with, you know, working and having a career. And it seems to be better than alternatives. And I'm not alone in feeling that. All of us here have seen a bunch of people in this industry who have kind of like left, but come back, or just haven't left, even though their jobs, whatever, may not be the greatest, because there's something about the industry which is sticky. And I feel very fortunate, as I think all of us are, to sort of intertwine a hobby and ability to earn something. And that is a rare situation, something that a lot of people in a way are envious of. And I would not want to be someone who is fundamentally bored or not interested in the work I did. That would not fit my personality style. And perhaps some of you feel the same way.
How do you think that works from an enthusiast perspective as well? You know, we've kind of focused on the question of it being from us in industry, but in terms of the same kind of, I don't know, skepticism or frustration with the industry can be from a consumer perspective as well. If every release that's coming out, it's a case of, no longer enjoying it. What does an enthusiast do? Should they be taking a break? Is it easier for them to?
I think the smartest thing an enthusiast should do is focus on the product. The social element should be like an icing on the cake, but if the social element is the hobby, that can get extremely exhausting. And I have recommended in the past that people spend like a couple of years figuring out what they like before they even decide to, go on Instagram and talk to other watch lovers or stuff like that. Because I think that sometimes it becomes more, I'll call it social centric versus product centric. And the most relaxing way of approaching this hobby is just to be into the watches, look at the ones you like, read about the ones you like. Doesn't matter what someone else thinks about it. Screw them. Their opinion doesn't matter to you. It's going to go on your wrist. It's your fantasy. It's your dream. It really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And that's the way of getting rid of the jaded part. It's just stop looking at the other people. Just buy what you like. That is the cure for the fatigue.
David, the most jaded you've felt in the industry in your career? Has there been a particular high or low and you've just gone, this is just, please hurry up and come another Watches and Wonders or something can get me out of this cycle of releases that we're in?
Yeah, I wasn't particularly happy when Baselworld fell apart and Swatch Group pulled out, and I saw it's not that slow demise, from one year to the next. It was half as full as the year before that, and then the year after, which was its last year, it was basically just a hollow, representation of what it used to be. It was quite disappointing. I think that was a low point, not just for me, but I also think that for the industry as well. So it's great to see that Watches and Wonders is growing. Just with the news we received this morning, Geneva Watch Days is growing. So I want to be part of an industry that has a lot of things going on, a lot of personal meetings. Just a revitalized industry, not something like, oh, we're too cool for school today. For that attitude to come from one of the big groups, I think is quite a bit of a letdown. Even
not like that stopwatch industry that's dying a slow death.
Yes. but I mean, their concerns with buzzword were of course established and all that. So I understand that, but I just want Watches and Wonders at all these events to thrive and for us to be able to come together and spend some, just rumors, throw things around and see what happens there. That's what I want.
Well, let's continue our building up of the watch industry, not necessarily the Swiss watch industry, by playing our favourite game, because we have 2 sets of releases from them this week.
Hi, I'm Ariel Adams from aBlogtoWatch. I'd like to tell you about Bezel, the modern app for buying and selling authenticated high-end watches. Bezel isn't like other platforms. Bezel was designed exclusively for today's timepiece collectors and enthusiasts, offering choice, convenience, safety, and service. In addition to personally authenticating each timepiece sold on the marketplace, Bezel also offers a personal concierge service to walk you through any part of the watch buying or selecting process. Want something not currently listed on Bezel? Their concierge service is happy to seek one out for you. Buying and selling a watch can be scary as well as challenging, especially with all the options out there today. Bezel uses a modern, intuitive interface to deliver a class-leading technology experience that makes it simple and fun to search through available watches or list one you currently want to sell. Try Bezel today and discover what others like you are already excited about. Get the Bezel app or use the getbezel.com website. That's GETBEZEL.com. Thanks.
Guess the price of the Seiko.
Two in a week.
2 in a week. I mean,
There was way more than 2. Let's be real. There was way more than 2. We covered
there were.
2. Yeah,
there were.
Yes, there were.
We just looked at 2.
There was multiple today, I believe. Actually, I'm not even not joking.
So just because Seiko, I have no idea why they're still sticking with this King Seiko thing. It was good to start off with as a fresh release from
Lord Seiko just didn't have the right to bring
an
to
old
it.
battle.
Seiko Plus was taken.
Seiko Plus Pro Max, King Seiko SGE 103, 105, and 107. Ripley, without revealing the price, what can you tell us about this watch?
It's the same watch they've done before, now with these dials that are inspired by a district in Tokyo where Grand Seiko was originally born. This is that. It's literally
go back into their vintage catalog.
Yeah, so this is not a new case. This is not new anything really. This is the modernized version of the famous KSK model. They first brought it out as a limited edition. I think it was a time only. Then they did like a Sunburst Black and Silver duo that was core collection offerings. They've done several others at this point, and now they've got this one. You get 3 dial colors, but from a functional construction standpoint, it's basically just a dial variation of one we've seen before.
So observe the King Seiko areas. What's the movement in this? Can you remember off the top of your head? Try not to scroll down too far to reveal the price.
It's that thin. It's not one of the 8L ones. It's the thin version that they're pioneering with, that they're kind of using for the King Seiko line. You can find it elsewhere, but it's not a Grand Seiko movement. It's a 4 hertz movement, so not 3 hertz like the rest. But it is pretty middle of the road specs. It's kind of runs similarly to like an ETA 2824. You got 42 hours, 4 hertz. It's a bit thinner than the standard Seiko fares, but
38.6 mil steel watch available with various dial colors. So keep that image in your head while we switch over, because we're not going to ask you the specific price. We're going to ask you which one of these is more expensive, the King Seiko or the hands-on Seiko Astron GPS Solar SSJ 027 and SSH 157. Ariel, you're a Seiko Astron fan. What do you think of these?
This is totally 2 different watches here, right? In terms of the case style and stuff like that. The one that has the bezel there, kind of royal oak bezel, as I call it. That's a cool watch. I've reviewed a different version of that. It's lightweight, it's comfortable, it's kind of funky looking, but it's actually a really cool watch. It has amazing lume. This other one on there, slightly more ho-hum styling, but the movement has a little bit more functionality. I think it's one of those GPS ones there. So I think that we're on the precipice of there being sort of a rebound of high-end Japanese quartz watches and from other, from Swiss makers as well. And the
You've only been
Astron
saying that for 10 years.
I know. I
It'll
want
happen
it to
eventually.
happen. It will. I know. But look, I mean, they're making this stuff. They're putting effort into it. I'm not really sure who the user for this is. They're cool watches, super deep dials. I've always just had a soft spot for these. I still think the King Seiko is more expensive.
Okay, well, let's stop sharing that and let's go around the room. So which is more expensive and what do you think the price is? So Ripley, don't know if you can remember the price of the King Seiko.
Vaguely.
The Astron GPS.
No, vaguely remember
expensive?
the Seiko. I have no idea what the Astron is, but the King Seiko is definitely more because it makes no sense. It does more. It's in a more elevated material. Therefore, it must cost less because it's Seiko. So I will say it costs less.
So the more versatile watch costs less than
I'll say there's a
the
delta
boring
of
rehash.
like $700 between them.
I think it's at
that's
least
that's-
1,000. I think it's at
That's
least
a good.
1,000.
That's a good. Let's do that. So the delta is 700 from Ripley. Ariel, which is most expensive, and what's the difference?
Definitely the King Seiko is more expensive. I think it's going to be a little bit more than a $1,000 delta.
$1,000.
I like how we've
David,
all
I'm-
abandoned reason. We're just going by like what we think Seiko's gonna do.
That's right. You don't. You're just trying to get your head into the marketing department rather than the actual engineering.
We're good at
David,
this.
Which is more expensive, and what's the delta?
Oh, is that me?
No, I was asking David, but he appears to be staring into the middle distance. So Richard, give us which is more expensive and what's the delta?
Well, look, I'm kind of going to have to let you guys steer me. My gut reaction was the fact, bear in mind, I'm not a huge kind of Seiko collector, so I'm not even particularly familiar with the King Seiko brand. So that's kind of news to me.
The King is so offended right now.
It's the only watch, all the expensive watch brands in the world, the only brand that no one can afford to collect is Seiko because there's so many of them. Even the deepest pockets in the land would not enable you to be a Seiko collector and collect all the Seikos.
That would be
There you go,
interesting.
maybe-
What would cost more, buying every single Seiko that dropped in a year or every single Richard Mille?
Oh, there you go. There's a chat GPT question if ever
So
there
that's a
was.
really good question. Imagine curating the Seiko museum. Like, it's impossible to fit everything in. Like, any given time you can.
They're going to put it in like a Costco.
So, Richard, give us your best guess.
So what I'm going to throw a spanner in the works. I'm going to go opposite, which shows maybe my naivety, but I'll say the Astron just because it seems, I feel like if there was that much of a gulf, would you be pitching this? So maybe I'm thinking into it too much. But yeah, I'll go for the Astron. We'll say by a $5.
This is how you know his company makes sensibly priced watches. He's using logic and reason to come up with it.
David, you get the final guess.
I would go with King Seiko just because it doesn't mean anything and they can price it however they want.
Yeah, well, and what's the delta?
Like $200 maybe.
Well, the King Seiko is 3,300 USD.
Oh,
That's crazy. Wow.
Told you.
And the Seiko Astron GPS is 2,200 and the Joule times 2,500.
It's
So-
50%
I was close.
over.
I can't
Wow.
believe I'm getting so much right now for launching a £1,700 watch, and there's these three-handers that are double the price.
You just needed to make it the King passion fruit.
King Studio Underdog, yeah, King Underdog. Now I know.
do you have
that
any
was mine.
valleys nearby you could be inspired by?
The Under King.
You need to, Richard, when you look out your office window, what do you actually see? More offices?
I'm going to tell you that I see beautiful Brighton Beach, but no, I currently see a bit of a car park. But we'll go with the Prior.
So you need some brutalist
That's the next
car
dial.
park.
Yes, that's the next
concrete.
dial. Grand Seiko can look out
British
of their windows,
concrete.
see Mount Awate. Yeah, you get British concrete with like
Aerated-
the meter
aerated rack.
attendant. Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
Good stuff. Well, in the chat, Breaking News Beats is talking about $20,000 possibly at gold Astrons and white ceramic. Yeah, you can certainly get very expensive Astrons if you look around. Right, before we play Hit Miss Maybe and let Kevin and Guy...
Did I win that one? I'm clear. I was pretty close.
Yeah, I think technically you won. Yes, if anyone could win at Seiko Life, then yes, Ariel, it's you that won. I want to talk about
over 3,000. Wow.
On Watch Pro, because we've been talking about collaborations. This is a Ulysse Nardin collaboration with Gumball 3000. We did ask ChatGPT a couple of weeks ago about which collaborations you would not like to see, and I do wonder if this makes no sense to you.
No, I was super excited to see this. I almost wrote it up, but when I saw that was a 150-piece limited edition that they weren't going to tell you the price of, that it was first going to be allocated to the drivers of this year's Gumball 3000,
Nico,
and thereupon
basically.
It could then be opened up to the public, I said, oh my God, I can't do that to discuss a color variation of a watch that already exists. So I was excited to see this. I remember the Gumball 3000. My first exposure to it was when Jackass was still on MTV. They sent those guys on the Gumball 3000, and it was through Europe that year. And any automotive race that could be described in the context of the MTV show Jackass probably lets you know it's a pretty interesting and unconventional race. The Freak is an interesting and unconventional watch. I'm happy to see this happen. It is weird, and it's orange. I don't like the thing on the case back. Let me see the movement. But other than that, I mean, it makes sense. If there was going to be a brand that would do this, I feel like UN is like an unexpected one, but also a fit.
They're also not the only one. Remember the Armin Strom Gumball 3000? There have been others. Look, the reason they like this race is because it's people spending money stupidly. And they're like, wait a minute, we have something that fits into that. So anytime people are spending money on impractical, showy cars, the watch brands just all congregate, be like, wait a minute, your wrists are empty.
Well, and also
this you're cool for a second.
And the Gumball 3000 isn't like F1 where this is like a performance driving thing. It's basically a tour for rich dudes to take their supercars through some pretty exotic and beautiful,
it's the least socially acceptable use of automotive money in the United States. And that's saying something.
Well, if you tune into Nico's channel where
it's a total Nico adventure. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, we ask the question often, who is Nico? And Nico is currently wearing a Ulysse Nardin, is who Nico is this week. Right. Let's let some people into the room.
Do we know what the price point is? Ripley, you said it wasn't announced, but do we have a vague idea or no?
If I had to guess, it'd probably be like 25 grand, because they've done the Freak X before and it's the lesser of the Freak. It's not like the Freak One or anything. This has a crown first of all. So what am I doing buying a watch and it comes with a crown? I don't want a crown. if I'm getting a Freak, I want to adjust it all through the case back and bezel. But
you can just break it off.
Yeah, this is like the watered down Freak. And if I recall correctly, like the X, the Ops version of this was right around there. I think it might have been like 17 grand or 20 grand. Obviously, if you're selling this to rich dudes who tour their supercars, there's going to be a premium. It's a limited edition, but yeah, I'd probably ballpark it around 20 grand. So
don't forget, it's 100% pure carbonium.
Do you think we should
I don't know what carbonium is, but I want to shake the hand of whoever came up with the name carbonium.
We're on the website. I'll show you just now for Ulysse Nardin. So I want to know, do we think, is this the right one? Yes, it is. Do you think we should request an allocation?
Well, I do find it interesting that they put price upon request for this model, because this is by no means like a breathtakingly expensive model. I can only assume this is solely for price discrimination. So when the guy who pulls up in his Bugatti to race the Gumball 3000, they're like, how much does it cost? And they're like, $200,000. He's like, bargain.
What kind of car are you driving?
Exactly.
Right.
For the record, I'm not sure Ulysse Nardin is doing that actually. I think we should say that before they sue it. And also, those days are gone. I think for most of the brands, but I understand it's fishy that they are not sharing the price.
No, I mean, the
Yes.
drivers are worried about the social media optics, but again, people know how much their ridiculous cars are. This is what they're suddenly worried about.
Right. If you're touring a Ferrari across East Asia in the Gumball 3000, I
not.
don't think anyone's
In
looking
Nico's
at
case.
your wrist and going, "Oh, that's a bit gauche. He's wearing a Freak X," you know.
And it's orange. What's he doing? Right, let's let Kevin into the room first of all for Hitmas, maybe. Good morning, Kevin. Oh, dearie me.
Hello, can
Repping
you
the
hear me?
brand. Repping the brand. Richard's clearly
Good on you,
crossed his
Kevin.
Of course, I heard Richard was coming on, so I had to, of course, take
I
a
believe-
leaf out of Ripley's book as well. I mean, he's the man with the swag.
I believe
I have
Guy
to
is
applaud
here
the
somewhere.
design skills here. This hat is meant to adjust over the headphones even.
Yeah.
Well, look, so
You
look,
think of everything,
take,
Richard.
I'll take the compliments for the hat. I got a grilling for the watches, but look, the hats are all good. You know,
hats
I'll
are
take
good.
it.
The hats are all good. I need a
I
hat.
do you
Send me
think
a
I'm
hat.
going to wear this all through this? I'm going to take off in a minute, Ariel. Don't worry.
Pass it around.
It's not a bad look.
coordinated, if we'd been coordinated, we could have all had one, and you could have passed it up the screen as if it was being passed to Ariel, and then you could have passed it across. So we need somebody send us, Richard or anybody else, send us 6 or 7 hats, and we'll do the passing up and down the screen. So there you go. So Kevin, if you take yours off, I think, and then you pass it to Richard, he'll collect it from the other side. Hey, there we go.
There you go.
Comedy
Yes.
genius
Oh, it
that is
works.
this podcast.
I'm sure
Right,
any audio listeners really appreciated that. You know?
Exactly. It's great. There's nothing
Very
like
high
a visual
production
joke
values
for a
over here.
podcast. Guy, good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. Feel like I've come into like a Hollywood special effects meeting. It's very impressive.
This is where it's at. This is where it's at. Right, let's make a start. So let's review this Breguet Type 20 hands-on gold and blue ceramic watch. Ariel, you got the hands-on with this. Tell us a little bit about it.
So not too long ago, Breguet relaunched the Type 20. They had the Type 20, then the Type 21, the Type 22, and they just reset back to the Type 20. David covered the launch pieces, and they debuted this new family of movements, which is pretty nice. Performs more or less like its Blancpain cousin, but isn't the Blancpain cousin as far as they tell us. Just a really good, robust 5 hertz chronograph automatic movement with silicon in there. Now they've made the collection better by making the dials 3-dimensional again. For the first time, adding ceramic, which to them is a big deal, in the for the bezel insert. It's a very handsome looking watch. Comes out in this style in rose gold with blue. It's quite expensive. I suspect that titanium will come in the future. It's definitely an improvement on some of the controversial elements that were part of some of the debut Type 20s. Again, still an expensive watch. Not perfect, but definitely a nice timepiece.
Good. Right. Let's very quickly give it a hit, a miss, or a maybe. 1, 2, 3, go. Maybe, miss, hits, right. Ripley, start us off. Why is it a maybe?
It's just okay. I mean, I don't know if anyone was actually asking them to make this watch. And I like the steel ones have a following. This is probably quite a lot more expensive. I think it's better than some of the other ones they've done, but it's very expensive for what is ultimately like just a sporty chronograph, where if you're looking for this type of look, you can get it from a wide variety of other brands for less money, and not in solid gold, even from the same brand itself. So it's okay for me. How much is this one?
38,000.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, that's
cheap.
a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a gold watch on the leather strap. But it's just okay. You know what I mean? Like it's not a bad looking watch. It's probably got a pretty good movement in there, but I don't this wouldn't be the one I would get, and at that price point too. There's a lot of other stuff on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I give it maybe. It's just not doing it for me. The other Type 20s are really, something's just not sitting right with this. I'm not quite sure what it is. I think maybe hands-on would help me understand the problem I have with it. I'm not as sure. Ariel, you gave it a hit, however, so no problem from you.
Honestly, I think any of us would be more than happy to wear this. It's got kind of that what we call a baller watch vibe, which is just basically a big conservative looking sporty watch in a precious metal. It's easy to get away with. It's just a nice, handsome, bulky gold timepiece with a pretty reliable movement. So it'd be hard to say no to it. Yeah, to pay for it, okay. There's a lot, less expensive tool watches out there. But this is sort of the same situation as the guy that wears like the solid gold Submariner. Like you definitely don't need to wear it in gold at all, but it's kind of like a screw you world to wear it. So this is a screw you world watch.
David, you gave it a miss. You feeling screwed over by Breguet?
Yeah, big time. I think Breguet is screwed over in some ways. I like Breguet very much. It's one of my favorite brands, but not for its present, but more for its potential still. I think this is a very industrial looking answer to something like, oh, what should we do? And let's make this. This watch looks like as it came from 10 or 15 years ago. It's bloated. You could easily shave off 2 or 3 millimeters off it. There's absolutely no need for it to be this large. It's also a mess in the sense that, like the dial is missing a 6, but the bezel has a 6, but it's missing a 12. But if you look at all the numbers and the mishmash of the whole thing and the functionality, or like there nothing on here really makes any sense, not from a functional or a proportional perspective. It's just a mess. The whole watch it doesn't make any sense to me. However I look at it, this
is like their really gold bad. Hublot Big Bangs. That's basically what this is. Breguet now has a gold Big Bang.
Yeah,
meanwhile,
probably like spinning in his grave like this, probably like because I wouldn't mind if this was theirs, but they are 20 years late to the Big Bang party. 20, So I'm
come on,
I'm just not sure.
Breitling's barely in that market anymore. No, they have all those gold watches.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not against gold watches, and I like the applied logo on the dial. That's the only thing that is really catching my eye here.
It's like a $30,000 logo.
I like the logo. Send me the logo.
Mr. Benc, how did you vote and why?
I went for maybe. It's kind of echo a lot of the sentiments that people said. I kind of, when I think of, and maybe this is a miss of me, when I think of Breguet, I'm kind of more drawn to their classic pieces. And you're right, this just looks like a watch in my mind that's maybe a bit outdated rather than a classic piece. Maybe it's in a limbo state where we'll look back on it in a few decades' time and admire it. It's not doing it for me, but it's personal taste, isn't it? Maybe it's simply just because of the size of it and the actual proportions, and me with my dinky little wrists would never be able to pull it off.
Yeah, Breguet's chat, yesterday's inspiration for today's design. Kevin, yes or no?
I totally agree with that statement.
I concord with that. So you give it a hit, did you?
I did indeed. I mean, for once they've used a ceramic bezel. I mean, I was surprised when I read that. I thought they're using ceramic for a long, long time, but they've just joined the 20th century using ceramic bezels. Even so, I love it. I really do love it. It is a baller watch with Ariel. I do agree with Ariel. It's a guy who says, I don't care. Just don't care. I want that watch. It's gold. The only downside, it's over 14 mil thick. And I'm sure they could. That is a statement piece. But the design, the needle hands, the applied logo, the applied numerals, even though it's missing a 6, I love it. I really love it. I wouldn't buy it for myself. I would wait until somebody else buys it and walks out the shop, and then give it 6 months. It'll be on Chrono 24 for 30% off or 50% off.
I thought you were just about to get on a moped there for a minute, Kevin.
God no, my balaclava.
Wait until it comes out the shop.
Yeah.
Do you think anybody's really stalking the Breguet boutique? Probably not. Probably not.
You might be waiting outside for a while before you found a viable.
I've been waiting for this watch for 20 years, and now it's here.
your moped has seized up by the time somebody's actually come out the shop with one. I'm interested in this guy. You're the strap guy here. They describe the strap as a NATO strap. Now, I thought there was a guy going around the internet suing people for calling things NATO straps. So can we expect a lawsuit against Breguet at some point?
I don't know. I have got a bit of a crazy opinion on this. One, I need to come back to the date and the 4 and the 5, and you get a bit of the 4 and a bit of the 5 and the dial. But my main thing, not that you've asked, I'm wearing our Lycomania watch today, which is named after the Lamania brand, which Breguet owns, which is an amazing brand with a load of history, which is exactly this style of watch. And if you're Breguet, and I've written to Breguet about this, and I tried to do it with them, but they need to revive the Lamania brand. Do this this is the style of watch they should do under that brand at a much cheaper price, and then it fits, and then, your Breguet is what Breguet would have wanted.
You want to work for the Hayeks?
No, I actually wanted to get the brand off them. I wanted to get the brand off them and relaunch it, because the Mania brand is so incredible.
Yeah.
With such a good history.
They'd force you to buy the movements for them.
They probably should, because, Lamania then became, the history is incredible, where it actually became the movement manufacturer in-house for Breguet. And, it's the Lamania movement is the Speedmaster that went to the moon. That's it's incredible, everything that is in that brand that is being ignored. But also, Rick has just zoomed in on that date, and I have no issue like him with the 4:30 date. But when the 4's coming up,
by the way, that's not just any date; that's a Swiss-made date. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So, I encourage everyone to go and look at the YouTube channel, aBlogtoWatch Weekly Live, and have a view.
It's like there's a pull of gravity pulling everything towards the 4:30 point, and they were like, "We're just going to put everything there,
including the 5 in the dial, which is significantly larger than the 2 in the dial." And yet, somebody looked at this and thought, what would be funky? What would make us distinguish us from everyone else? We'll put this Swiss-made by the date window, not at the bottom at 6. We'll shunt it to the window.
Shockingly bad.
It's just quirky.
It's like the designer had a tick and his arms kept going to the right. Everything's going to go there.
And it's so funny because the entire watch is like tilted to the crown. Basically, everything is just large. That gravity point is so spot on. It's hilarious.
Interestingly, except for the 3 that's beside the crown, which is resisting the drag, and who the bottom of the 3, I'm not quite sure how. I've actually lost count of how many fonts are on this watch. I think there might be 7. I think there might be 7 different fonts in use in this watch. Richard will probably give us a more accurate description. But there we go. There we have it.
Oh my God.
Yes,
Thank you, Breguet. Thank you for that.
Thank you for entertaining us. Anyway, there we go. Good stuff. We will now just do a quick check where everybody is. Ripley, where are you? What are you wearing? We missed this.
I'm in Los Angeles. I'm wearing this rather interesting bungee cord Casio Pro Trek. And I've got Breguet on the hat because we're talking about them.
Top man. Are you now taking the hat off? Are you like, I should say that?
No, I'm just wondering why if it's going to start just shifting on me too off to one side or something.
I was just going to say, I think for the rest of the show, could you just move it about 23 and a half degrees over? Yeah, just like that for the rest of the show. That's absolutely perfect. Spot on. Ariel, where are you? What are you wearing?
I am in Los Angeles, and in response to the accusation that I don't like tide charts a couple of weeks ago, I have the Apple Watch with the new tide complication here. Great piece of software. Now I'm up to date on how the tides are at all times, and I know how to use it as well. There isn't some strange push I don't understand. So I hope that's redemption for my tide-hating ways.
There we go. So it was that or the Tag Heuer Hodinkee collab. Yeah, I think it was probably a fairly even money that Ariel was going to pick the Apple Watch over a Hodinkee collaboration. But there we go. David, where are you? What are you wearing?
I'm in Budapest, and in my hand I have the Moza. Have I shown you guys this already? I'm not sure if I already had it on a previous recording.
No.
The Streamliner Chrono. It's kind of cool. I have it in for review. I wore it during Geneva Watch Days, and I still have it. So that's good news. It's quite good.
We'll edit this bit out so that no one from Moser sees that you're.
I think Richard might have some connections at Moser.
Yeah, Richard might have to report. He might have to report.
Oopsie.
There's a missing Moser watch.
Well, I got it through Germany, and they told me to ship it back to Switzerland. I'm like, do you really want to spend like 10% on customs and procedures and whatever? I can send back your 45,000 Swiss franc watch from Europe, from the Union to Switzerland, but that's gonna hurt. So they are still figuring that out if they want to do that.
Good stuff. Richard, where are you and what are you wearing?
I'm, as I said, in Brighton, looking over the beautiful Brighton beach. We'll continue with that. I'm double wristing because why not? I've got a Minions watch, the first watch I ever designed about a decade ago on one wrist. So had a hand in designing this. It's got a cool complication where you pull one of the levers and a disc comes flying out. I don't know if you saw that. And
now, the real visual effect there would have been for the disc to come flying across past.
That's
Ariel
what I wanted the Moser to be.
Absolutely.
And then on the other, a watch that I've had a more recent hand in designing, again, the Moser.
So
you've already abandoned your own brand. You've tasted success for 1 minute. You're like, screw this. Going back to your roots in luxury.
If I double wristed Studio Underd0g, no doubt you'd be giving me for shilling the brand. So I thought I'd
don't worry, Richard, I got you covered.
I thought Kevin rocking the hat would,
Shill away, sir. Shill away.
Shill away. Kevin, where are you? What are you wearing?
Well, of course, I said to Richard, I got you covered. I'm wearing the Desert Storm.
There you go. There you go.
So yeah, I love it on his mesh bracelet.
Excellent. Guy, let me just tune in to the ether. And where are you and what are you wearing? I'm just having a guess in my head. I'm imagining it.
I am actually double wristing as well. So on the one side, I have the Like Mania, as mentioned. And on the other side, in Richard's honour, I've got a mint choc chip.
Very good. Very good.
Just,
well done, team.
Very good.
Me and Kevin are doing a job. Doing a job for you.
Absolutely.
I'll just
cash in envelopes coming later.
Yeah. I'll just cut off the bottom of this screen. I'll just cut off for the edit. Well, I'm in Scotland. I'm wearing a Panerai, but I'm still saying that this is worth looking at.
Oh no!
This polo watch.
Just get my Miss sign back up again.
But I've also got this sitting on the desk, which is very interesting. It's not the Citizen 880 100th anniversary, the first Citizen watch. I quite like it. Not convinced of it yet. The dial is really nice, but it's really chunky. It's maybe a bit small for the chunk, but we'll try that for another week or so.
The man who wears a Panerai daily is saying something is chunky. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but the Panerai is then 44 mil, whereas this is 40, so it just sits differently. Anyway, right, we've done that, so we can do our next hit miss maybe. And our next hit maybe is going to be this Horage Supersede date dive watch. Well, a lot of us are familiar with Horage and what they're doing. They kind of plough their own furrow. The guys across there are very fond of giving an opinion or two. They're not afraid to speak their minds. So we too will not be afraid to speak our minds in the judgment of this watch. Big date, Horage's own micro rotor movement and everything that holds. But what do you guys think? Judge this book by its cover. Is it a hit, a miss, or a maybe? 1, 2, 3, go. Maybe. Couple of hits, mostly maybes. It's a maybe for me because I still think, and this is, maybe it's a British thing that we always just want to change the branding. Richard, never change your branding. Just stick with Studio Underd0g exactly the way it's done. Don't do a Bremen or a Christopher Ward. Or as I think the logo needs changed. I just don't think it works.
They can use any of Christopher Ward's old logos. They've got
Old
a whole
logos?
box.
There are
They've got a
plenty
whole
going
box
around.
of them that they're not using anymore.
So I think refresh the logo or the way that it appears on the watch and the watch strap. I just don't think it matches the quality of the actual watches now. But there we go. Ripley, what do you think?
I said it's a maybe. I'd be curious to see one of these in person. I've seen plenty of their other non-divers in person. I like that it is a diver, but it kind of really looks just more like an integrated bracelet watch, but you do get that thin take on the rotating bezel. I like a lot of what they do. Something about it, despite not being like the standard diver look, something about it just seems slightly generic to me compared to some of their other designs where they kind of lean more into that sort of modernized motif, crosshatch motif they do. But I'd be curious to see it in the metal. There's a lot of things I like about it, but I don't know if I had my choice of any of the Horage models, this would be the one I would actually choose for myself.
Fair enough. Ariel?
I said maybe, but it's more like a no leaning maybe. The problem is this. I see this brand as being set up to showcase the movements that I believe the company was mostly interested in selling. The brand was supposed to be a showcase, like, whoa, we're making watches to showcase the movements we want other companies to buy. I don't know how many companies buy their movements, and now they're like, uh-oh, we're stuck, actually selling the watches with their movements in there. So it's sort of like the whole branding and everything was just like as a showcase, right? Not really something meant to be marketable. So it still kind of feels like that to me. They're like, oh, wait a minute, this has to go prime time. So the movement seems fine. It seems competent enough. Nothing about it feels original enough to merit special attention. If someone just handed it to me and be like, here, wear this for a while, I'll be like, okay. But there's nothing on it that I can emotionally grab onto. It has no hooks because it still just looks like a watch that's meant to showcase a movement they want to sell.
I mean, it is a very pretty movement. Don't get me wrong. It's a really good movement. David?
I gave it a maybe because, I understand that there's a niche for something like this. That's your very generic, go anywhere, do anything, sort of diver, everyday wearer watch turned up to 9, maybe, in terms of like complexity. If you look at the clasp, if you look at the case, the bracelet, everything is like relatively nicely done. It's, you have to spend this much, which is around 5,000, if you want this level of craftsmanship from something like this. Sometimes, I mean, because not everybody wants to spend 1,000 and have some sort of compromises. And this one, you get better workmanship across the board, and you pay the price for it. So if this is your niche, then go for it.
Richard, before we get your opinion, I think I found what the problem is, and maybe it is a British thing, but it's this particular British thing. A man with an H on his head, and every time I see the Horage H, I think of Red Dwarf and Mr. Rimmer here. Richard, what do you think? How did you vote?
I went for a hit. I quite like it. I think the micro rotor is a really, really cool feature, and I love what they're doing with their movements. I can tend to agree with Ariel in the fact that maybe they're not. That's not one of the key parts of the communication. Most of what you guys spoke about, that it was a miss or a maybe, was the kind of the overall more generic design elements of it. I think it's kind of got some cool identifiable design components. I think that bezel, namely, is very on brand. I like it. I'd probably go for it in a different colorway. But no, I'm a fan.
So it needs some passion fruit coloration in it or something similar. Kevin, your thoughts?
I voted a hit. I do love the bezel. I love a Hublot bezel. That's really, really nice, the way it's been done, the way it's been executed. The overall aesthetic is right up my street. I love the flash of the colour, orange or red in it, just to make it distinctive. The on-the-fly clasp is nice. I would have liked the actual clasp to be a little bit smaller. It looks a bit chunky or a little bit long for what it's needed. But apart from that, it's a solid piece. For 5K, you can't get much better, really, I think. It's pretty cool. It is pretty cool.
Good, good. And finally, Guy.
I give it a maybe.
An
It looks better
enthusiastic
from
maybe by the
behind.
sounds of it.
Do you know what? I mean, the only thing I actually like about it is the movement. I think the movement and the micro rate is really nice. I think the design's not very good. I'm really surprised with what a couple of you said about the bezel. I think the bezel looks like it's taken off a different watch and stuck on there. It just doesn't fit with the design. I think with it.
No, I think it does.
With a
I really
non-dive
do.
bezel, I mean, it will go a little bit Gerald Gentry, but with a non-dive bezel, I think it would look a lot better.
It would just look like everything else.
Yeah, the Dotty logo is horrible.
Dotty logo. So anyway, we'll see. I mean, there must be.
So yeah, I gave it maybe. I'm going towards a miss now.
Mm-hmm. Well,
no.
on the basis that Christopher Ward and Breguet have all changed their logos recently, there must be a watch logo designer now looking for some work somewhere because he's been and done the rounds, or she's been and done the rounds.
I'm not sure.
So
He's got to have a great portfolio.
That's right. If that's right. If you're Horage and you're knocking on the door, you go, so what other logos were involved? And it's like, oh, I did the new Breguet logo.
Let's not forget some of Breguet watches had Horage movements in them.
Yeah, well,
the movement's very nice.
Yes, the movement's very nice. I'll tell you a story about how those two firms ended up speaking to each other, but that's for another day. Right, final watch today is this. Because who doesn't love a bit of skeletonization? Or maybe we don't love a bit of skeletonization. The NORQAIN Independent Skeleton Chrono 42mm watch. My feeling is that NORQAIN have come off a bit of a high and are now veering quite quickly down the slopes of whatever mountain they're skiing on. But what do you guys think of this from NORQAIN? So judge the book by its cover. Is it a hit, a miss, or a maybe? 1, 2, 3, go. Miss, hit, maybe, maybes. Oh, quite a lot of maybes. It was only me that gave it a miss. I just think it's an ugly piece of watchmaking. I am sorry, but that is my opinion. Ripley, how'd you vote? What do you know about this watch?
I said it's a maybe. I mean, I think the statement of NORQAIN being expensive for what it is sort of applies across the catalog. But then I especially feel that when you get to the watches that don't have a Kanisi movement, I don't really love the way that this is skeletonized. And you know, if you're going to skeletonize something, I really do feel that it should either be affordable and it's a nice way to get your hands on something that looks mechanical, or it should be because you're showing off the movement and either it's technology or finishing. And so this is kind of like a neither here nor there. But I would almost rather take this than one of just the standard chronographs, just because it's a bit different. So it's a maybe, but not the one I'd want for myself.
Ariel, the one you'd want for yourself?
I said hit. It's not like the strongest hit. I liked the purple and black. I thought that was good. I've seen a lot of skeletonized watches lately, and I guess when I saw this one and could still read it, I was like, oh, okay, that's good. So I think for
Okay,
me,
fair
that's
enough.
the highlight, is I can read it and it still has all that skeleton nonsense. It's not cheap for NORQAIN, but again, if you look at, let's say, like a Big Bang, this is as much watch in a lot of ways for a lot less. So I think this is, actually in a lot of ways a good value. Sometimes they come out with weird colors. I agree that the one you're looking at, the kind of standard steel one, it's like not the most exciting colorway, but they had to start somewhere. So I think this is it's actually a remarkably competent product if you really think about it, though. As we can see, I mean, like the little mountainy thing on there, like that's not going to survive in the future versions.
Yeah, another brand whose logo might evolve slightly. David?
I gave it a maybe. I think these are not that bad. I feel like these are attractive watches for someone who's just getting into the world of watches, because it's like throwing a lot right into your face. Like, look at all of this, and then it takes time for you to realize that there's nothing going on. It's the same with what happened with the early Heuer ones and whatever. You see a lot of openings in the dial, but there's very little in the way of actual mechanical stuff going on. So it's more show than the substance, I think, sometimes. Yeah.
Richard, do you agree? More show than substance?
I'm a big fan of the brands and what they've done previously. This one for me is a little bit too chunky and too big for my liking. I would have liked to see them kind of extend the range of some of their previous products, but overall aesthetically, I like it. I think they're known for their skeleton aesthetics and their use of color. It's just a bit of a chunky number, so I gave it a maybe. But I like the brand. I like their direction. I think they're doing some really cool things.
Good. Kevin, do you agree, disagree?
I gave it a maybe. It's legible, which is a good start for a skeletonized watch, and basically skeletonized, and it's purple. I mean, it's two things which are in vogue at the moment.
Yeah.
So obviously everybody's just going down that purple color route. It's okay. How much is it? $5,000?
Oh,
Close to $7.
It's nearly $7 for the DLC in titanium.
I told you all about purple, didn't I?
You did indeed. You did indeed. You always got an inside track, Ariel. It's not for me, and it does remind me of a very cheap Roger Dubuis. I'm sorry to say.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
If you like that aesthetic, which I do, I do love Roger Dubuis watches. This is a cheaper version. It works, but there's something not quite right about it. So yeah, it's a maybe for me.
Baby Roger Dubuis guy for you?
No, for me, I think it's a really smart move, and I think it's a Wild One Chrono, if you look at it like that. And I think I've given it a hit based basically on the black and purple one, because I like the black and purple one. I think the steel one they probably shouldn't have done, but I think the Wild One has been such a massive success for them, and is so kind of like synonymous with the brand, that the black one looks like they've made kind of a chronograph version of the Wild One, which makes sense.
And what you're saying, Guy, will come a full-on Wild One Chrono. So it's like that's obviously in the works.
Do you not think this is the Wild One Chrono?
No, because
the Wild One is the same as the Independence. It's the same shape, but this doesn't have the same case construction. So
yeah,
no,
the Wild One's all
Wild
about
One.
the case on that one. So I'm with you. I'd love to see a Wild One Chrono, but again, please use a different movement. I think $7,000 for a movement that can also be found in a $2,000 watch is.
You want it more expensive.
Yes.
A nice skeletonized Lamania.
Yes. Tell Horage. Apparently Horage has some fine movements you can put into things. So,
Yeah, there we go. Good stuff.
But it feels like it's a step in that direction. I think I think early NORQAIN was kind of slightly generic, and then they found their feet with the Wild One and that design, and the purple and black carries on the kind of themes of the Wild One. And I think where the brand kind of will be going.
I just wonder whether brands like, I don't know whether I'd lump them all in together, that NORQAINs, Ulysses, Horage even, have kind of come off the COVID hype train and don't quite know what to do now. Whereas actually a brand like Studio Underd0g, you've managed to kind of, you developed in that market of everyone was sitting at home on their desk wondering what they were going to do, but you've managed to push on from that. Whereas it just feels like there's a number of brands have just got a little bit.
Do you not feel like
stuck.
NORQAIN have got Marky Mark wearing it, and Stan Wawrinka and bringing out the one of one? I feel like their hype train's still chugging along pretty well.
Fair enough. Maybe one man's hype train is another man's not hype train.
Marky Mark is the grand arbiter of hype, apparently.
You're just a Marky Mark fan. That's good to know. Good to know where your music tastes like. That explains the baseball cap. Anyway, right. That is us for our show today. Thank you all very much for joining. If you have been watching on YouTube, thank you. If you're listening to in the podcast, then know that you can watch us live on a Tuesday morning around about 7:30 UK time. And it would not be a show at all if I didn't try and give you the WhatsApp number. So it's +44 7386 690 897. I did find some bagpipe music, but it's just far too complicated to try and play it live over this. So I will try. I'll need to.
Did anyone do the alphanumeric thing for the phone number for us?
I looked at whether I could make any words out of it, but it's far too complicated. So we need to think of a phrase we want to say. and then
What was
number
wrong
it
with the
up that
email
way.
address? Is my question.
Podcast.
It was all easy to remember. Podcast at aBlogtoWatch.com. Super simple.
Super simple.
No
saying.
jingle needed.
No jingle.
No jingle needed.
Oh, you
Well,
need bagpipes. Come on. Need somebody just to pop up behind
We
Rick.
could have bagpipes behind
Bagpipes.
anything, obviously.
pass the bagpipes from this side of the screen and this
Absolutely.
side of the screen. Right. Okay. Well, that is our main show over. So if you're on the YouTube channel, you can hang on for another minute or so of some post match. But from the rest of us here on the recording of the show, then it's a goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.